Josef Mengele is a name that has become synonymous with cruelty, inhumanity, and the darkest corners of scientific experimentation. Known primarily as the Angel of Death for his horrifying medical experiments in Auschwitz, Mengele's story is one of privilege, radicalization, and escape. His life was a complex web of ambition, ideological zeal, and calculated violence, leaving a legacy of terror that still haunts survivors and historians alike. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at Josef Mengele's life. From his upbringing in an affluent family to his notorious role as a Nazi doctor and his eventual escape and life on the run. We'll dive into the gruesome details of his experiments, his involvement in the Nazi ideology, and the elusive end of his life in South America. Viewer discretion is advised as we explore the horrific nature of his later work. Josef Mengele was born on March 16, 1911, in the small town of Günzburg, Germany. His family was well off, running a successful farm machinery business. As the eldest of three sons, Mengele grew up in an environment of privilege and traditional conservative values. His upbringing was marked by strong Catholic beliefs, yet it was also steeped in the nationalist ideologies that began to stir in post-World War I Germany. Mengele was academically gifted and exhibited an early interest in science and medicine. He studied philosophy in Munich, where he was introduced to the pseudo-scientific ideas of eugenics, a field that aimed to improve the human race through selective breeding. Influenced by the racial ideologies that were gaining traction in Germany at the time, Mengele focused his research on the classification of racial differences. His academic work positioned him as a promising figure within the scientific community, with a doctoral degree in anthropology from the University of Munich and a medical degree from the University of Frankfurt. Mengele's early career involved working under renowned geneticist Ottmar Freiherr von Verschuer, who specialized in twin studies and racial biology. It was here that Mengele's twisted fascination with genetics and racial purity took shape. In 1937, Mengele joined the Nazi Party, and a year later he became a member of the SS Schutzstaffel, Adolf Hitler's elite paramilitary organization. Mengele quickly rose through the ranks, demonstrating his commitment to Nazi ideology, particularly the idea of Aryan racial superiority. He embraced the Nazis' belief that the purity of the Aryan race could be achieved through medical intervention, and that inferior races like Jews, Romani people, and Slavs were not only expendable, but biologically dangerous. The outbreak of World War II and the subsequent opening of concentration camps across Europe gave Mengele an opportunity to put his dark ambitions into practice. In 1943, he was appointed to Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest of the Nazi concentration and extermination camps. Here, Mengele's reputation as a cruel and sadistic figure would solidify. Mengele's time at Auschwitz, the Angel of Death. Auschwitz was a sprawling complex made up of three primary camps: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, Birkenau, and Auschwitz III, Monowitz. It was at Auschwitz II-Birkenau- where Mengele conducted his infamous medical experiments. As a chief physician in the camp, Mengele had virtually unlimited power to perform whatever scientific research he saw fit, no matter how horrific. Selections at the rampart of Mengele's most notorious roles at Auschwitz was his participation in the selection process. When new prisoners arrived at the camp, it was Mengele and other SS doctors who would decide their fate. With a mere flick of the wrist, Mengele would send some prisoners to the gas chambers while others were condemned to forced labor. Mengele was often described as calm and even smiling during this process, as he determined who would live and who would die. His calm demeanor stood in the stark contrast to the horror he inflicted. Mengele's particular interest lay in selecting twins, people with physical abnormalities, and dwarfs, his so-called research subjects. To him, these individuals represented a unique opportunity to study genetic traits and deformities, often using them for experiments that defied all ethical boundaries. The twin experiments Menengel's work with twins is perhaps the most infamous aspect of his time at Auschwitz. Under the guise of advancing genetic science, Mengele performed a series of brutal experiments on pairs of twins, often young children. The goal was to explore hereditary traits by comparing the physiology of twins. However, the reality was far more gruesome. Twins were subjected to painful, invasive procedures without anesthesia. Mengele would inject one twin with various substances, including pathogens, to observe the onset of illness and compare it with the healthy twin. Some twins were intentionally infected with typhus or other diseases to study their response. Many died as a result of these experiments, while others were killed outright so their bodies could be dissected. One particularly disturbing experiment involved Mengele sewing two Romani children together in an attempt to create conjoined twins. The children died of gangrene shortly after the procedure. Sterilization and mutilation. Mengel's interest extended beyond twins. He performed a wide range of other horrific procedures on prisoners, particularly women. One of the core goals of Nazi science was to develop methods for the sterilization of undesirable populations. Mengele tested a variety of brutal techniques on female prisoners, including the injection of caustic chemicals into their reproductive organs, which led to severe pain, infections, and death. In other cases, Mengele performed amputations, removed organs, or injected chemicals into prisoners' eyes in an attempt to change their eye color to blue, a trait associated with the Aryan ideal. Survivors of Auschwitz recall Mengele's cold demeanor as he inflicted pain and suffering under the guise of medical research. When Auschwitz was liberated by Soviet forces in January 1945, Mengele fled. Unlike many prominent Nazi figures who were captured and brought to trial, Mengele managed to evade justice. He initially went into hiding in Germany, assuming false identities to avoid detection. By 1949, Mengele had fled to South America, where a network of Nazi sympathizers helped him avoid arrest. He settled in Argentina, later moving to Paraguay and then Brazil. Mengele continued to evade capture for decades, living a relatively quiet life under a series of aliases. Despite multiple efforts by Nazi hunters, including famed figures like Simon Wiesenthal, Mengele was never caught. He reportedly lived in fear of discovery, but managed to stay hidden by frequently moving and relying on the support of right-wing and fascist sympathizers in South America. In 1979, Josef Mengele died of a stroke while swimming in Brazil. He was buried under a false name, but his remains were later exhumed and positively identified through forensic analysis. Mengele had escaped justice, never facing trial for the atrocities he committed during the Holocaust.